Welcome, everyone, back to the Fantasy Football Profit Podcast. I'm Craig Phillips, joined as always by Jeff Torrey. And today we're going to try to help you a little bit again for your playoff run here with some streaming defenses. And I'm going to look at quarterbacks a little bit too. And just some general strategy here to end the year. We got 2 regular season weeks left. Hopefully, you've wrapped up some playoff berths and appearances, and you're kind of already planning for week 15 and beyond as you try to make a run at the championship. So we'll try to do our best here to help you out. And even the last couple of weeks here and who's a good streaming option. Jeff in our main league, Jeff needs just one win in the next 2 weeks and you're in the playoffs. That's it. One win. The next 2 weeks you get in the playoffs. I've already wrapped it up. So maybe we have a championship appearance against each other this year.
Oh, I would love it. That was the one I started off slow too, so I'm feeling good. I should be playoff bound in all 3 of our major leagues. So
hopefully we'll do that. But before we even get into the actual teams for a second here, some strategy stuff I think that can be talked about is if, let's say you are wrapped up, definitely go try to plan your defenses right now for 15, 16, 17, but not just your matchups. Look at your opponents. Who are you facing in the playoffs? In our league, we know who we're facing in the playoffs pretty easily because we do divisions and you play each other. You know who your matchups are going to be if you're in, most likely. And maybe those teams are streaming defenses or maybe they're streaming quarterbacks. And look for week 15 and who they might be looking at and pick them up before they do. This is where you can start to block your opponents on stuff like this. And I think that's we have people in our leagues that have been streaming different defenses every week and they've been streaming even quarterbacks. And you can definitely block some people. Hoard defenses at this point, too. If you have the bench spots, I don't mind hoarding defenses because what do you need all those bench spots for anymore? So defenses that are actually beneficial here. So we did this episode, 2-3 weeks ago? We talked about Steelers, Chiefs who were good for the run. I think even Saints, they've all gone up in ownership percentage. You're not getting them most likely in any competitive league at this point. I mean, I guess it's possible, but those kind of Steelers, Chiefs, Saints, who we talked about, are pretty much gone. But if we're just looking at playoffs, we're not even caring about the next couple weeks. One defense we did talk about was the Eagles. I think they're an awesome playoff option for you right now at this point. They play Seattle week 15, Giants week 16, Arizona then after that. And then even if you went further for some reason, the Giants. How about the Eagles? You like that if you're looking at the playoffs already?
I mean, I love it. I picked them up in 2 of my leagues already, knowing that I'm going to supplement. And I have Dallas in one and Baltimore in the other. And the Eagles just have a much better schedule. So I want to make sure I have them on my team.
The problem is, it's these next 2 weeks, San Francisco and Dallas. So they could be dropped in leagues, in your league. Easily.
But without a doubt, they have and that's why we loved them so much, is because they have a terrible schedule leading up to the playoffs. So if you're trying to win now, they're a luxury you can't have, right? So there is a good shot that they would have to throw them back. So not only do they have a great playoff schedule, but there's all the reason in the world for a team to throw them back. And there was a team you didn't have to trade for. Mm-hmm. And right now, even now, getting very close to the playoffs, they're less than 60% owned. So you're right there. It's possible. It's not going to be for everyone, but there's a good opportunity that Eagles might be available.
And honestly, they've held their own against good teams these last few weeks. They've had a rough schedule for a while, and they keep winning. It's kind of crazy. So they've held their own. So once they get to those those matchups like Seattle, Seattle doesn't even scare me slightly against the Eagles. That'll be easy. So Eagles are awesome. If they're out there, go get them.
In week 16 against the Giants, you don't get much better in the playoffs.
You scared of Tommy DeVito?
Yeah.
That's going to be an awesome matchup. Week 16. Oh, crap. If we play.
I know. I was going to say that would be us.
Oh, man.
And then they play against Arizona, which a little, not as good of a matchup. But at the same time, I'm like, they're going to make Kyler's life
if we match up in 16, I will have Steelers, though, against Jake Browning and the Bengals.
Yeah, our defenses are going to be the big winners.
So that could work. So another one I'll say we talked about last time, and I have to mention it again because they've been poor, is the Lions. And the Lions have had a couple weeks against the Bears and the Packers where they have definitely, the defense has struggled. If you see my hat, if you're watching on YouTube, yes, Lions fan, it's been bad. It's not been great on that defensive side. So there's definitely some worry if you have them. They're right about 50% owned, I believe. This week they play the Saints. This is they should have a good schedule for the rest of this year up until week 17. The Saints, man, if they can figure this out, the Saints should be a good matchup for them. Derek Carr hasn't been good. And then they play Chicago. They beat. Yes, they almost lost to them a couple weeks ago. Last night, the Bears couldn't even get a touchdown.
Yeah.
I mean, Lions have to be better than that. Then they go Denver. Denver's been improved. That's where it starts to get a little iffy now. And then Minnesota, though, I do not. Josh Dobbs doesn't worry me.
Well, yeah. I mean, once again, the game from last night. He had 4 interceptions going into the fourth or whatever. It was crazy.
Yeah. So how do you feel about it, though? The matchups are great. They've been struggling.
Look, the thought process is correct. New Orleans, Chicago, Denver, Minnesota, right in a row, leading up to the playoffs, including the playoffs, and then I wouldn't play them against Dallas because I wouldn't want that matchup. But they just haven't been playing well. Their secondary is poor. They put up a lot of points, so the other team has to put up a lot of points.
Mm-hmm.
Running quarterbacks have been. I don't know. There's no real reason. That's the weird part about Detroit lately. I can't tell if it's their secondary, if they're right now.
I know, like there's
people.
What is it? What is the problem? Is the pass rush the problem, or is it the secondary who can't cover anybody, so there's no time for even to get to the quarterback? I don't know. Or do they not get to the quarterback, so they have too much time and they get open? Yeah. I actually don't know. I'm not an expert on it.
But it's not a bad team to pick up because they're struggling, and I do think when they hit Minnesota in week 16 and even Denver and Chicago, I have no problem. Like, we didn't look good against Chicago. Lions didn't look good. And they still put up 5 points defensively. That wasn't bad. But the thing that scares me in Chargers the week before, and here's the thing. Starting week 7, Baltimore completely demolished them. But Baltimore can be a good team. So you kind of, take it. They did great against Las Vegas. They scored 12 points in standard. And then you have a bye, and then you have the Chargers, which can put up a ton of points. Once again, they go -5. But I was kind of like, hands off. Okay, whatever. Chicago, you put up 5, and you really struggled. And then you hit Green Bay, and you got -1, and it was a buzzsaw. They've been living on borrowed time. Mm-hmm. I do wonder if after this wake-up call, if you're about to see them get back to where they were, where week 3 through week 3 through 6, they were actually playing really good defensive ball. But I don't know. Do you actually believe it? Is it enough tape on them?
What I think I would do in this situation, we're looking at like, okay, we're trying to be in situations where you feel very confident in your playoff appearance at this point, right? And you should hopefully have some bench op. You have some bench spots maybe you can use. Put them on your bench. Maybe wait to just see how do they play against the Saints, how do they play against the Bears, before you feel confident in playing them against the Broncos, who played way better than they did early in the year. So maybe you don't play them right away, but I think the Lions are worth having on the end of a bench, where maybe if they improve, you have a good option, or you just stop an opponent from having a good option as well. That's a lot of these too. Sometimes it's just, if you see these awesome matchups that, like, if the Eagles were out there in your league, maybe you don't need them. But do you want your opponent to have them? That's the thing. Like, so these are some of these. Week 16, do you want your opponent to have the Eagles playing against the Giants? No, go pick them up. But the Lions could be that too. I would put them on a bench. Maybe I don't play them until I see it one more time. But I'm just, maybe being a Lions fan is really, it gets me a little worried too. But I want to see that defense improve. They have the ability, I believe, to do it. So I think they'll get there. One other team, I don't think we talked about them last time, but looking at this schedule, I kind of like it. And there's only one hiccup on it. It's the Jags. Look at, they're down there. They are.
Oh, Baltimore week 15.
Yeah. So they're 26% owned only. They're the 13th ranked defense in the year, so they're respectable. This upcoming week, they play Cincinnati and Jake Browning. Okay. They did nothing last week. Then they play at Cleveland, who's Cleveland going to have in 2 weeks? Is Joe Flacco going to be playing quarterback for him? You might be. Then it's Baltimore. That's the bad one, week 15. But then it's Tampa and Carolina and Tennessee, if you've got that far.
And Carolina is a great matchup. That is like marquee.
So there is only one bad matchup for Jacksonville, which is a solid defense.
I like that. I have one more for you as well, and even lower on the radar. And I'm not exactly sure why, but I'm kind of falling in love with the fact that you can pick up Indianapolis Colts. And I look at their schedule, and there's no one. I mean, you have at there's a couple at playing away, but at Tennessee, not afraid. At Cincinnati, not afraid. Pittsburgh, not a big offense. I don't consider it. I'm not too worried about it. At Atlanta, Bijan has been doing better, and then you have Vegas to finish out with, and they're a pretty good matchup.
I like that schedule too.
There's no one that you have to take them out.
They're actually better on the year than Jacksonville. They've had a good. They've played well defensively against bad teams. Maybe they've struggled against some of the better teams, but when they play bad teams, they're really good.
Yeah, and they're only owned in 15% right now.
So Colts and Jags are definitely ones that could be out there in your leagues, 25 or less. Those are two absolutely great options. And the best part in that 1 week that the Jags play Baltimore, Colts play Pittsburgh, which yes, they got a new offensive coordinator. They maybe they got more yards this past game, but they have like the 5th or 6th lowest scoring offense in the league right now. Pittsburgh does, and they're still like 7-4, which is crazy. Pittsburgh doesn't scare me. You can't change. I mean, there's some low effort on that team, to be honest. Like between, I don't know if you saw the Deontay Johnson thing. There's no effort whatsoever, and there was a fumble. He just like walked around, and Pickens is basically Pittsburgh doesn't scare me essentially. So
yeah,
but I like that. Colts are a great one. Jags I think are a great one. There's definitely some good. You know what? I like the Jags and the Colts better than I do the Lions.
I do too. Their defense has been playing better,
mm-hmm.
and Lions do have sometimes it helps in order to put up a lot of points, but I do think, like anything else, if you put up a lot of points, that means that the other team gets a lot of opportunity and they have to get desperate and start airing it out. And that burns you every once in a while. And you see that with halfway decent teams, which in the NFL, most teams are, pretty decent. So I think that is hurting the Lions.
I got one more that I'll throw out in case like these options aren't available. And it's a team that really hasn't been a great defense, but it's Houston because I like their schedule. Denver this week, who knows, right? That I could see that being a low-scoring game, maybe not, whatever. But then it's the Jets, Tennessee, Cleveland, Tennessee. Yeah. It's a good schedule. So if some of these other options aren't there, that's a team that should have a good schedule. They haven't been a great defense. They're also not like just getting destroyed. Just the amount of points they've actually given up in the last couple of weeks. They gave up 24 against Jacksonville, 16 against Arizona, 27 against Cincinnati. They did give up 37 against Tampa, 15, 13 before. They're not the worst. They're obviously not top tier. But with that kind of schedule, and Jags are not there, and Colts aren't there, and Eagles aren't there, I think that's a solid option.
I'm going to throw out one more, and they have not been a good defense, but I want to get your take on it. And we've already given out a bunch. The Falcons. If you look up Atlanta, their schedule is good, but is it kind of one of those where you're
again, it's an okay, like some of these other ones are gone. They're not the worst. They have one matchup I don't like.
Which one's that? Tampa Bay?
No.
Indianapolis?
It's more Indianapolis, probably the one I don't like. but that's not a bad matchup.
Yeah, not a bad one.
Tampa
Bay and Indianapolis can make you hurt, but the thing I really like about them is the fact that you have the Jets, this week, and then you have Carolina in week 15, and then you do have in week 17 Chicago, which I feel like it's going to be a low-scoring game. It's at Chicago, and more than likely Chicago is going to have nothing to play for. So I kind of like those three in particular. And then Tampa Bay and Indianapolis, if you have to play them against them, you're probably not winning the week with them, but at the same time, I don't think they'll hurt you too bad. And they've been a lackluster defense in general. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's actually some solid options here, though, to get you through the rest of the year. And honestly, block your opponents. I'm telling you, that's honestly I think an overlooked thing. If you have some roster spots of players that you just don't care about and aren't using anymore, go get some extra defenses because you never know. So I'm going to move over to see if there's a streaming quarterback or two. If people have been doing that, not a lot of people stream, but Burrow got hurt, right? So there's definitely, and I can't get my thing to load. So Jeff, you might have to help me here. Here we go. There we go. Got it. Burrow's got hurt, obviously. So you lost that one. We talked about Dak a couple weeks ago, and we talked about maybe I'd want Dak over Josh Allen. It was a weird thing. Josh Allen's been awesome too, but Dak's been good, but he's just at this point, everyone knows.
Yeah.
And trade deadline's passed anyway at this point. You're just not getting Dak anymore. But if we're looking at week 15, we're looking at, people for the playoff run. And I'm going to go 57%. I think Russell Wilson, we just talked about the Lions, D, and how we're worried about them.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson against the Lions in week 15 to start off the playoffs isn't the worst. Russ he's not saying even up and down. He doesn't have a lot of like big weeks. He doesn't also hurt you a lot necessarily. He doesn't completely crush your chances. But can you see, we've watched the Lions play. You can see him finding open guys against them in week 15. I 100% can see it happening. They're going to be in the dome. They're in Ford Field. It's inside. There's no weather concerns.
Okay, here's the thing too. I feel like the games that he happens to play very well on are teams that score on him, that are other good teams. And if you look at that, since week 10 or whatever, they had the bye in week 9. But Buffalo and actually the week before that, Kansas City, both weeks he's gone over 20 points. I think that he would be a solid matchup for a team like Detroit or even Houston next week and whatnot. But for the playoffs, you have Detroit, New England, and then the Chargers, when the Chargers can put up points too. So I know it's a weird thing to be like, oh, they're going to put points against them. Why is that a good thing? But you got to throw the ball more. And so when you have to put the ball in his hands, it doesn't matter if he throws a couple picks. You need the touchdowns.
But even week 14, if you're going to playoffs, the Chargers plays the Chargers. Chargers defense isn't good. So he could do something there. And week 16's the Patriots. And even Houston's this week. I think Russ has a good schedule here.
Yeah.
If you've been streaming and you need an option, go get him. Or if your opponent's been streaming and you don't want him to have Russ, go get Russ and stop your opponent from streaming him. Maybe they just lost Burrow or whoever. Don't let your opponent stream him. Don't do that. How about Jordan Love? How do you feel about Jordan Love?
I was actually going to bring him up. Was it 50% rostered almost? He's on the upswing. I still don't know if I believe him in overall, but
probably not this week.
Yeah, if I'm looking at, I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. KC's defense is actually pretty decent, but at the same time, they've really let him throw the ball a lot more in the past 3 weeks, and it's working out for him. He's gone over 20 points, over 25 against Chargers, 32 against Detroit. You're going to be at home for KC. I don't hate it. And then you have the Giants, Tampa Bay, Carolina, and Minnesota. You have a great schedule for him. And even KC, unless you have a defense that just makes you pay, I don't hate having a quarterback going up against another high-powered offense. And
he's QB 10 on the year.
Yeah, he's put up some numbers. And really what he did was he started off really hot, and then he had a middle of the season that was pretty lackluster, and it was really capped by week 5. Las Vegas, he only had less than 5 points. That happens to young quarterbacks, but he really pulled it together.
I would say far and away, those two are my favorite streaming options. By far, my favorite streaming options out there.
The truth is there's not really many others.
I only have one other guy that I would even consider, and that's Stafford. And I don't even love it. But the Rams did put up points last week. He did well. He threw 4 touchdowns. In his upcoming schedule is this coming. Cleveland's not a good matchup. You don't want to Cleveland's tough. But in Baltimore is not great either. So you don't like 13-14. But after that, Washington, Saints, and Giants, it's not the worst. But I want Russ and Jordan Love over him. But Stafford, I don't know the situation you're in and what kind of, what quarterback situation's out there. But I'd definitely go Russ and Jordan Love over Stafford. But Stafford is probably the next best out of the bunch, I would say. And the rest I don't love at all. I don't like anybody.
Yeah, I don't.
If I'm being honest. I don't. It's just whatever. Who knows what'll happen?
Yeah, I can't really throw my weight behind
anybody else.
No.
It's Russ, it's Jordan Love, and then below them is Stafford. And I will say, the Josh Dobbs thing, I don't even want to talk about him because I don't want to play him. I think it was a good story, but there's a reason why the Cardinals traded him. There's a reason why the Browns traded him at the beginning of this year. There's a reason why. Who was it with Titans last year? The reason why the Titans didn't re-sign him. There's a reason why the Lions didn't care that he left their practice squad. He's a backup quarterback who couldn't do anything against the Bears. So people would be tempted week 16, I believe it is, to play Dobbs against the Lions if the Lions continue to struggle. But I wouldn't. It could be Dobbs with Jefferson, maybe different, but just so I guess I'll say with this one, maybe just see how the Lions play. I just wouldn't want to trust Josh Dobbs in any situation.
Yeah, I'd prefer not to. I mean, he would be the third down there. You never know what's going to happen if you only have one quarterback, if you get an injury or something. Right. I mean, I guess you can't get too picky at that point, but I agree with you. If playoffs are on the line, not the guy. Even though he had a run of good games. There's no doubt about that.
We haven't seen him with Justin Jefferson yet. So does that change things? Maybe. So I guess
that's actually a very interesting point because I do think people are going to point to that and say that is a unique opportunity. He's going to have one of the best weapons in the NFL. I have Jefferson on a dynasty team. I am actually afraid of that first game he's back because I do not think they'll pepper him. I do not think they'll use him as they once did. Him and Dobbs haven't really played together. I feel like I'm walking into a trap, but I have to play Jefferson. So I feel like, especially that first game back, I do not think that is a positive for. It's not a negative, but I don't think it's a huge boost to Dobbs.
Yeah. So there's better options. Russ and Jordan Love to me are great options. So hopefully they're out there for you. But all right, that'll do it. Hopefully you guys are going for the playoffs. So like I said, stock up, like get rid of like worthless bench players at this point and have a few defenses. Stop your opponents from having them. Stop your opponents from having streaming quarterbacks. Just do that at this point. Get yourself set up the best you can to win those championships.
Well, is there any other players? I know it's much more shallow. Any other players you're even looking at?
No, believe me, the waiver wire is like in just the quarterback wise. You're saying like there's just nothing. I can't do it. I mean, you're gonna have to play 100% matchups. It's not going to be about the player for me. It's the matchup. So if man, I don't even know. It's so bad. Do you have anybody in mind?
The only, honestly, I do not have a wide receiver. I do not have a running back. I feel like if you don't have him right now, you just pick the.
I can't even.
I will say the only guy, because I keep looking for the edge, right, and that's why we're talking so much about quarterback because you have to. Defense because it's the easiest play to gain an edge because you can constantly look for a matchup. The only other player I see out there that is kind of worthwhile, and we don't even know, you won't be able to play him for another week at least, but if you do not have a lockdown tight end right now, Isaiah Likely, I would throw him on your bench, and if he goes off when he comes back, he'll have a bye, so you'll be able to get him probably. If he does well against the Rams, then you have Jacksonville, San Fran, which, you know, it's going to be tough on everyone else on there, and then Miami, which could be a shootout. Isaiah Likely has shown himself to be a wide receiver and a tight end body. Andrews is out. I'm reaching, but at the same time, I do think that there's ability there.
I will throw out one. Let's say you're in a rough situation like this week where you really just need, we can see it in one of our leagues. One of our league mates has his second running back this week is Royce Freeman. So it's rough. So there are some, like Jeff Wilson, 27% owned. A-Chain, is he back this week? It doesn't look like it, maybe. So, Wilson had an okay game, so you could throw Wilson in there. Roshan Johnson had 10 carries. He didn't do much with it, but it's 10 carries, and Foreman was out. So those are the kind of guys that are down there, like a Wilson, like a Johnson.
What about Keaton Mitchell?
I love Keaton Mitchell.
I know you do.
So yeah, Keaton Mitchell for sure. He's still like 30-something%, right?
Yeah.
So this is like you need to play like this week, right? Keaton Mitchell's going to get some work, I think, and
Well, okay, that he's on bye this week. Okay, so I can't do that.
But for next week, I love Keaton Mitchell. If Keaton Mitchell's out there, I think I'd put him on my team. But he's on my team, so
yeah.
But yeah, but this is part of the reason why, and we'll talk about this next year a lot. Why I say early on, I'm always very adamant about spending your fab early because it dries up here. Okay, I will say one more thing about it, though. We will have a waiver wire guy yet this year. I think that makes a difference in the fantasy playoffs.
Actually, well,
it usually does, but I don't know who that is yet.
I agree, but if you're getting your handcuffs, I hate to be the guy here. Like, it feels way too late in the game to do that.
But I just saw that Algiers 30-some% owned and Spears is 30-some% owned. Algier might be 40-some%.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of guys.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't even know if this would actually shake out the way I did, but I had an extra spot and I was like, well, I didn't have one, but I was like, I don't need this guy. And I picked up Elijah Mitchell. I was just like, if anything happens to McCaffrey, I would just love to be the guy that's smirking in the background being like, maybe I have.
Those are the other ones where if you can't get your handcuffs, like Rico Dowdle could be that for the Cowboys. Like, I don't, something like that.
Yeah.
But that's about all we got. But all right, there we go. Hopefully you guys get some championships. Maybe me and Jeff will play each other. If we do, maybe
we'll have one more episode for sure if we play each other.
Well, yeah, for sure. So we'll see how that goes. But all right, talk to you guys next time.